Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
PMQs underway. Theo Usherwood watching it so that you don't have to. We'll catch up with events there imminently. Conversation this hour is going to be a little bit different to the conversation in the last hour. I can promise you that. But I just want to take a moment again to say thank you to Emily and to Giles and to Ellie, three parents who rang in with a personal perspective on a story we're discussing about a judge ruling that doctors can essentially override the wishes of parents and allow a profoundly sick little boy in Liverpool to die. I often say on the programme that your contribution is going to be immeasurably more interesting if you are speaking from experience than if you're merely sharing an opinion. And sometimes it probably sounds a bit pointless and trite, but that, I mean, God, it's never been truer, has it, than it was in the last hour. But we move on now. And actually, on a much less serious level, that observation still stands. I would love to talk to people who know a little bit about this story. I, for example, know that the GMB is currently claiming it warned Kentucky Fried Chicken that this chicken-based disaster that's sweeping the country at the moment could be a consequence of their decision to give a distribution contract to DPL. That's quite interesting. I also know that, or I fear, and this is the first thing we can establish, but it has to be first person, actually you, because I went to KFC on Monday, investigative journalism, actually, I believe it's called, to see whether or not it was true, because it just seemed a little bit unlikely. You sweep social media, you see a couple of stories. Kentucky Fried Chicken has run out of chicken. It sounds like the beginning of a playground song, doesn't it? Kentucky Fried Chicken has run out of chicken. And it was true. There was a sign in the window. I took a photograph of it because I'm an investigative journalist, and I put it on social media. And there was a sign in the window, appallingly spelt. And it seemed a little bit funny. And then I popped into Nando's, where Antoine, the manager, very kindly gave me a free burger. And the thought occurred to me that if the workers in that KFC next door, 2 or 3 doors up, were on a 0 hours contract, then the failure of a massive company like DHL to deliver chicken to a restaurant probably franchised by a very wealthy individual, they were responsible for the fact that Johnny over there couldn't go to work today. And because of the nature of his employment, and I don't know whether this is true or not, that's the first starter for 10, is whether or not KFC workers are routinely on 0 hour contracts. And I want to speak to you. I don't want you to tell me that you know that they are. I want you to tell me about your employment terms and conditions at Kentucky Fried Chicken. That means that they're going to get they're going to get hit in the pocket. They're going to get penalised for the failure of a massive company like DHL, which presumably divvies up dividends to its shareholders on a regular basis. But Johnny today doesn't get paid because the branch where he works is shut because the DHL geezers haven't delivered the chicken. And that stinks. But it's actually a little bit like our predictions coming true, isn't it? When we started looking at these 0 hour contract stories and we started wondering about where we end up if you continually just slice a bit off, continually penny pinch, continually reappraise the contracts, the Carillonification of the British economy, of the British service sector. Where would it end? So about 200 have reopened since Sunday. Yesterday, 460 were still closed. Hundreds of restaurants remain closed because of what we've been told is a breakdown in its new delivery company's computer system. And I don't know. I want to say something profound and clever about the whole thing, but I can't at the moment. It just seems to me to speak of an aligning of the planets. Why have they given a new contract to a new company? Presumably because they thought they could save money. Why has the new company failed so disastrously to deliver the chickens? Presumably because when they tendered for the contract, they put it in as low as possible, and now they're struggling to actually deliver. Presumably. 24,000 workers employed by KFC in Britain. Direct staff on short-term contracts will be paid. Is anybody there on a 0 hours? I do not know. What do you know from the inside? From the inside of this story, what can you tell us? Come and use this platform. Don't believe the hype about the so-called hashtag MSM. Go here and tell your story straight. What's going on at Kentucky Fried Chicken? 0345 6060 973. Some of the responses have been a little bit silly. I'm told that police have been called and that your civil disobedience is only moments away. But the national officer of the GMB, Mick Rick, said that the closures were the result of, and I'm afraid he's not going to win any prizes for comedy here, KFC's bird-brained decision to award the distribution contract to DHL rather than renew its deal with Bidvest. We tried to warn KFC this decision would have consequences. Well, now the chickens are coming home to roost. He can't help himself, can he? Bidvest are specialists, a food distribution firm with years of experience. DHL is scratching around for any work they can get and undercut them, which is where I hear echoes of Carillion. But I could be wrong. I don't know. What do you know about this? Hit the numbers now, you will get through. 0345 6060 973. The union leader says that KFC knew 3 weeks ago they had made a terrible mistake, but by then it was too late. They're left with hundreds of restaurants closed while DHL try and run the whole operation out of one distribution centre where conditions are an utter shambles. And indeed, newspapers today have pictures of rows and rows of chickens that are presumably going to end up being not incarcerated. What's the word I want when you set fire to stuff? You're not going to lock up the chickens. It's ridiculous. Incinerated, thank you. The chickens are going to end up being incinerated. And I know we've all visited chicken shops in the past where the chickens had already been incinerated, but you understand what I mean. Destroyed, not just wrapped in delicious family recipe and deep fried to a point of succulence. So I just want to know what's going on, okay? 0345 6060 973. And I also want to know whether or not this is simply bad luck on the part of a company or whether there is something in what the union leader is saying. A couple of you have been in touch saying that you saw on the television news that staff were being paid. I'm glad to hear that. Chris in Surrey at the front of the queue. They're going to be paid based on their last 12 weeks worked hours, so they aren't losing wages. I would like to confirm that, because if you're on a 0 hours contract as opposed to a short-term direct staff contract, then you wouldn't necessarily be entitled to that. So if bosses are stepping in to pay when they don't have to, they deserve credit for that, even though I don't really like living in a country where bosses get to decide whether or not their staff get paid after the shop shuts through no fault of the staff's. 11 minutes after 12 is the time. 0345 6060 973. It was in Tower Hamlets, apparently, that police said they'd received a few calls regarding the closure. Please do not contact us, they tweeted, about the hashtag KFC crisis. It is not a police matter if your favourite eatery is not serving the menu that you desire. That's pathetic on the part of the police. It's just because Tower Hamlets is one of those no-go zones that the racists keep telling us about. That's why they're not getting involved in the KFC crisis in Tower Hamlets, because they're terrified of Sharia chickens. Obviously, that's going to be the case. You can email me, you can text me, you can tweet me, you can, of course, call me on 0345 6060 973. But just to be clear, you don't need to work there to talk to me about this, but if you're going to tell me about whether or not people have been paid, then you probably do. Am I going a little... I nearly said Corbyn. I've got to stop doing that. I've fallen into the trap. A lot of you have pointed out, I never say Theresa Mayhem, but I always say Comrade Corbyn. If I can be gaslighted and groomed by the right-wing media, what chance has everybody else got? So have I gone a little bit Wolfie Smith when I suggest that this looks to me like evidence of some of the kind of issues that we've been trying to knit together in recent months? All right, and I got this far without using it, but I'm going to use it now. Coming home to roost. Will's in Enfield. Will, what would you like to say?
Hi. It was just, I think the KFC restaurant story is a perfect example of something a bit bigger, and it's that everything's being driven down to the lowest common denominator, and so nothing is able to sort of expand or grow. It's just like everything's being chasing that last dollar, that last dime.
It feels like that, but you already thought that was happening before you rang me and before this story happened, and I already thought that this was kind of happening before. So this story isn't necessarily evidence of our theory, is it? It could just be really bad chicken-based luck.
You could say that, but it's like a face farm. It's so predictable, isn't it, that someone at that company goes, I know, let's try and squeeze a margin somewhere that then makes the whole sort of house of cards topple down.
I think you're right, but I can't prove it, and nor can you. That's me being balanced.
That's fair enough. I mean, I'm nothing to do with either company, but you just sort of see it where you look at like delivery companies, and you had a story on a couple of days ago about Deliveroo and whether they are kind of good for the takeaway world. And then Deliveroo are chasing margins and paying minimum wage. The takeaway.
I don't know that they are paying minimum wage, actually. I have to be slightly careful what you say without full facts in front of you. I think they maybe pay a little bit more than minimum wage, but we'll let that pass.
But equally, you hear disgruntled employees say, we're working crazy hours and I barely make enough money to meet. And make ends meet, I should say.
Do you want me to read you a sentence that will strike terror into your cold, Enfield-based heart?
Sure, go ahead.
So, because I just got a tweet saying DHL run parts of the ambulance service for the NHS, James. This is from Steve. If they can't deliver chicken, how safe is the ambulance service in their hands? And I thought, oh, come off it, Steve. And then I thought, no, usually when people tell me stuff like this, it's because they know more than I do. A simple little tweet, DHL NHS supply chain, and I just stumbled across this sentence here. We are operated by DHL, brackets DHL Supply Chain Limited, on behalf of the NHS Business Services Authority.
That really does strike fear into my cold Enfield heart.
Well, warm yourself up with the chicken. Oh, you can't.
No, I just think it's like one of those stories. You used to hear news stories like that, and you would just go, "Oh my God, what the hell? That doesn't make any sense socially." Whereas nowadays, I'm so fatigued by stories like that. You just go, "Oh yeah."
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. And again, as becoming something of a recurring theme on the programme at the moment, the befuddlement one feels those who fail to see it so clearly is well, I suppose it's why both major parties are neck and neck in the polls at the moment. The delays in deliveries, according to the Times, were caused last week when KFC switched to DHL, which had announced in November that it would take over from Bidvest Logistics to supply food and packaging to KFC restaurants. The governments and private sector love these big companies until they do a carillon. Seems they can just hoover up as much work, we shave a little bit off. What were we told? Not reverse engineering, reverse something or other, where they come in as low as possible and then find ways to charge more afterwards. I don't know if that's the case here. But DHL had promised to rewrite the rule book and set a new benchmark for delivering fresh products in a sustainable way. To which, if I were employed by DHL, I'd now respond by saying, well, they have set a new benchmark for delivering fresh products in a sustainable way. I don't believe any previous deliverer of chickens has been so incompetent that they've managed to close almost every restaurant in the land. If that's not setting a new benchmark... I never said it was going to be high. It's all gone a bit bird and fortune, hasn't it? I thought you said, Minister, that you were going to set a new benchmark in delivering fresh products in a sustainable way. Well, I did. But all the shops are shut, yes. I have set a new benchmark, lower than it has ever been before, where we find ourselves contemplating the Kentucky Fried Chicken crisis, which is not quite as funny, or indeed nearly as funny, as it seemed to be when we first heard of it on Monday. I'm offering out anyone who works for KFC, I'm going to completely reinvent your name and your location, because if you are getting kebabbed at the moment, then I take it upon myself to protect you. But I need to know what it's like on the shop floor, and we'll start with Jake, who's in Macclesfield, allegedly. Jake, what can you tell us?
Hi, good afternoon, James.
Hello, mate.
Basically, I won't take too much of your time.
Take as much as you want.
The fact of the matter is, because of this chicken crisis, what happens is most of the staff in the KFC franchises do tend to be on contract, and then there are a handful of them who are on zero contract. But the zero contract ones, and there are also staff who are cash in hand, so they're not officially on the books.
Well, we can't talk about... Well, we can, actually, because you haven't given away any details, but there's legal protections there that just don't exist. That's dodgy business. I'm interested in the stuff that is going to have a paper trail. So,
Sure.
Did you work in one yourself?
Yeah.
And you've been told to stay at home?
We've been told to stay at home because most of the staff is actually recruited by the franchisee. So it's the franchisees, they actually recruit people on zero-hour contracts. And we've basically just been told to stay at home. And if this continues, then we don't have a job. How
many hours were you expecting to work this week?
52 hours.
And we're up to D3, are we now?
Mm-hmm.
And you learnt nothing?
Nothing on Tuesday today. I've been told not to come into work tomorrow or Friday. They don't think this to be resolved by at least beginning to middle of next week.
So they've messed up, and you're paying.
Well, yeah. What the manager's thought process is, because they can't open the shop, no customers, they can't serve the customers, so they don't need the staff. So if we're not doing our hours, we don't get paid. We only get paid for the hours we do.
You seem quite relaxed about it.
I'm not relaxed about it.
No, sorry, I don't want to misrepresent you.
No, I'm not. The thing is, the shock. The shock was mainly Monday and Tuesday, and with time,
I see what you mean. You got used to it now. So, what reason have you been given? Because I mean, I can read about DHL and depots and sustainable whatevers, but what reason have you been given? I mean, how the hell can Kentucky Fried Chicken run out of chicken? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, we haven't been given reasons on the fact that they ran out of chicken, etc. We've just been told because we don't have the stock to serve the customers, therefore the restaurants are closed, and because the restaurants are closed, we have no customers to serve. We don't need the staff at the time being. Once we reopen, then we would need the staff. But then again, having said that, even us on 0-hour contracts, me and my sort of colleagues, etc., we're also brought in at peak times as well. And then sometimes when it's this happens once every sort of week, when even though we're on the rota system, if it's gone quiet, we're just told to go home. We just called in and said, right, anybody today?
How is this going to affect your financial situation? So there's 2 or 3 days' work already that you were expecting to get paid for that you haven't been paid for. When do things become a bit hairy for you?
Well, they become hairy by this Friday because I don't get a fixed salary. I'm on 0-hour and I get paid on a weekly basis. So if I've got no work this week, I don't get paid this week, with the exception of Monday. And then if I've been told that don't come back until they let us know, which is likely to be beginning to middle of next week, it means that if I don't get work till Monday or Tuesday, then a solid week I'm out of work, out of pay.
Again, I can't believe that you don't sound angry, but as you've explained to me already, you've had a couple of days to get used to it. And also, this is your life, isn't it? This is, I mean, you're used to being sent home.
We live on hand to hand. This is our bread and butter. This is what we earn.
Educate me. So I'm sorry for sounding so ignorant and out of touch. I mean, this is just how you live. You're not shocked because this is your daily experience. The boss can turn around if things are quiet and say, "Sorry, pal, you're not getting paid today. Off you jog."
That's right. They can call us and say, we're quiet this evening, or even at sort of 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. Let's say my shift's supposed to finish at 11. I can get called in and say, right, we're a bit quiet, so you can go home early. Yeah. And then at the end of the week, you did less hours on the day because you went home early, so you get less paid.
They just chop it off.
And then we've got students as well who are studying. I'm studying, so there are other students who are studying, and I get that. I can see how there are sides of it that suit you. I don't want to pretend that it's 100% bad or 100% good, but I'm pretty confident it's 100% bad for you to lose your wages this week as a result of the idiots. Yeah. Do you feel obliged when they ring you and say, we're busy, can you come in? Do you feel capable of saying no? No, we can't say no. That's the contract we've got. So we know what our set rota is for given 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then they can ring in and say, we don't need you, or can you start late? But we have to be at the restaurant on time. They will never turn around and say, right, can you come in? We're more busy.
I see. No, I've got you. So they're going to book you and then unbook you rather than ring you up on your day off and say, can you come? They won't ever need that situation to come up.
They've actually got more than enough staff per branch.
Do you know what I do?
I rotate around 3 branches.
Right.
So they've got enough for each.
And they're all owned by the same franchisee.
That's correct. Yes.
Do you know what you should do? You should flog the secret recipe.
Only if you knew it.
Only if you knew it. Take care, mate. You know, I wish you the very best. Let me know if there's anything I can do to keep the story up the flagpole, so to speak, because this is just rank. It really is. And what I hope you'll allow me just to take a moment to reflect on that conversation, because I think what you heard there was somebody describing the simple reality of his life to somebody who finds it still stunning. And just as it was unfolding, I can't remember why, but someone's tweeted me a reminder of that time Andrea Leadsom said that small businesses in this country, like a KFC franchise, Workers shouldn't have any rights at all. So someone like Andrea Leadsom thinks that your man there has too many rights in the workplace. Vote Brexit. Rob's in Nottingham. Rob, what would you like to say?
Hi there, James.
Hello, Rob.
Well, basically, I've worked for a company myself for 5 years when I was a student, both the company and a franchise.
Okay.
And my partner works for a franchise of the company at the moment whilst he is a student. So
right. What's the score? What's going on? When did she find out?
Well, he
might look at me falling into that little trap of presumption, sexist presumption. My apologies, Rob. When did he find out that he wasn't going to be going to work?
Well, basically, his store's been closed for the past 3 or 4 days. Luckily, it hasn't fallen into the periods of time when he works because he's only part-time as a student. But really, I just called to say that if the people at the top of whoever runs this company are losing money, I would be happy to see that, because working for the company myself, I can't express to you how much they try to cut corners and how little they enforce the workers' rights.
Too many rights, copyright Andrea Leadsom, 2016 or 17.
Yeah, I mean, I just I'll give you some examples. I haven't named the franchise.
No, you can't. I don't think. I wish you could, but it's just me and a phone, mate. So legally, I'm just not. How many hours a week is your partner contracted to work?
I think him and everyone else who's on either full-time or part-time contract have a 4-hour contract per week.
So this is how they can claim that they're not on 0-hour contracts. You're actually on a 4-hour contract, but you're hoping to get 50 hours like the last fella.
Absolutely. So they can say, yes, we don't do 0 hours contracts in this company, but how could you pay the bills on 4 hours a week?
You couldn't. And presumably your partner is getting paid diddly squat this week because the restaurant's shut, or not?
Well, unfortunately, it hasn't fallen on the days where he's working, so hopefully when he goes to work on Wednesday, it will be back up and running, but we have no idea.
It's Wednesday today, Rob.
Sorry?
It's Wednesday today.
Wednesday today, there we go. Okay, so he's not at work today. That's me, don't even know what day it is.
It's all right. I was young once. I suppose we have to, and I know it's a bit of a stuck record, but I just got a tweet or a text from a fella in Eastbourne. You have to bring immigration into it, don't you? Because people like Peter in Eastbourne will look at the DHL story and see that lorry drivers aren't getting paid enough money, and instead of saying, well, we need strong unions, we need strong political leadership, we need an insistence that these people can't take massive profits out of these companies without paying their workforce more, and we can't insist that they pay their workforce more until the workforce unites and bargains collectively. Instead, because of people like Peter in Eastbourne, you'll be able to go, oh, I blame immigration, and DHL just will walk off with your money and your chicken. Oh, dear. 12:36 is the time. What are we talking about? Well, the GMB union has slammed Kentucky Fried Chicken for what it described as a penny-pinching decision to award DHL its distribution contract. It had warned, it claims, that the outfit would not be up to the job. I'm trying to find evidence of them doing this before the event. Thus far, I haven't, but I'm not going to read too much into that yet. KFC's bird brain decision has caused untold misery to customers, to Bidvest workers. I hadn't thought of them. What happened to the people who were working for the company that supplied the chicken, delivered the chicken before the contract got moved? Presumably there's a big turnaround in jobs as well. And the restaurant staff who are not being paid, something that we have established. I don't think, Mick Ricks, if you're listening, I think one bird-based pun perhaps might have been all right, but you've gone for bird brain decisions, coming home to roost, and now I've just seen they've been left with egg on their face. Seriously, mate, they're talking about people's livelihoods, and I appreciate a pithy one-liner as much as the next man does, but having spoken to that fella in Macclesfield, who's not going to get paid, expecting 50 hours of work this week, is not going to get any, arguably, potentially. I don't know that chicken-based puns are necessarily the answer. PMQs roundup on the way in a minute. I'm hearing that it's a particularly interesting one, and that Corbyn might have put something of a cat amongst the Brexit pigeons, but we shall have to wait and see for more details on that with Theo. 12:38 is the time. What do you know about DHL, KFC, AOK? LBC. Martin's in Rugby. Martin, what can you tell us?
Hi, James. How you doing?
I'm all good, Martin. What's on your mind?
You kind of beat me to it there, reading out that last quote. Me, personally, obviously being a truck driver in the industry, the blame has got to lie with KFC because they haven't done their due diligence.
On giving the contract to DHL, you would say. So when the GMB have said, we warned you, you would say, yeah, as someone in the industry, I could have seen this coming as well. What is it about DHL? And bearing in mind that they're a lot richer than I am, so none of us want to get sued.
They're too big for their boots, in a nutshell. Obviously, being with it in the industry, and as I said to your colleague, and I don't want to name names and whatnot, but...
No, you can't. I'll send you home if you do.
Right, okay. Well, we'll say supermarkets and go no further, right?
Yeah, okay. That's good.
So, a certain supermarket uses DHL to deliver their fuel, so that supermarket's fuel tanker is owned, run and operated by DHL.
Okay.
And that, well, is the same as with KFC. It's the story right across the board. They have different fingers and different pies, and it gets to a point where they're so big that...
But they're pretty good. I mean, I think I understand what you're saying. This is where the Carillion echoes perhaps apply, in that they just hoover up so many contracts.
It's going to take a Carillion-esque balls up, if you'll pardon the expression.
Couldn't we have gone for popcorn chicken?
Yeah. Aye. You know, before something happens and somebody goes, oh, hold on a minute, DHL are in everything here, and it's, you know, at what point do you say, well, hold on a minute, you've got that contract, you've got that, cornering every aspect of the market, and there's no competition left for the little guy.
255 staff at Bidvest reduced as well. And the thing I'm having as a bit of a road to Damascus moment at post-Carillion, and to a degree pre-Carillion, was, but surely no one would run a business like this. If someone like Martin can see so clearly that this is going to hit the buffers or the GMB, but this is the point that people like us miss, because we presume that the people doing the contracts and doing the deals and buttering the bread, we presume that they're like us, and they're looking miles down the road, and they're thinking about their family and their responsibilities. But when you're in the business of money, all you're looking at is money. So all they're thinking is, how much can we take out next week? And there might not be anything left the week after, but if we're only interested in how much we can take out next week, then you get an idea of how stuff like this can happen. So Carillion ends up being run essentially on an almost hand-to-mouth scale, with you know, every new contract being used to prop up some of the gaps in the old contracts until, as you say, the whole thing comes down like a house of cards.
Mm-hmm.
Happy days.
Aye, so we'll see how it goes.
We'll see how it goes. What are you going to have for lunch in the meantime? Where are you at the moment? Are you on the road?
I've just pulled in, and there's a garage behind me, and funnily enough, it's got a KFC, but it doesn't actually look open.
Well, it won't be, mate. Have you not been following the news?
I know. So
go and have something healthier.
Some other fast food joint.
Go to Toast. My youngest recommends Toast. Go and get a falafel salad, mate.
Sounds good. Okay,
does it really? Good grief. There you go. 12:41. Must be a millennial. Bilal is in Palmer's Green. Bilal, what have you got?
Hi, James. James, I've got nothing to offer on...
That's my man, my perfect caller.
Nothing to offer on the employees. But at the top of the hour, you said that this is you know, the recent times we've been talking about these failures.
Yes.
And that's what I want to emphasize. I don't want to sound like an old git right now, but you know, increasingly, James, you know, the Grenfell disaster, that's down to the fire.
Value engineering. Value engineering is the phrase I was looking for. Yes.
James, I used to be a facilities and project manager, and the responsibility from the fire service for buildings, fire safety, was passed down to people who were ticking boxes in a folder.
I have heard this
led
before.
to stuff like the Grenfell disaster. Let's go on to Brexit and how people, you know, thought it was perfectly well to lie to the public. And that's what I'm saying, that lying is becoming the norm. I heard on Monday on Ian Collins' show that when this KFC started, was that the DHL knew that their distribution centre for these chickens was not ready. So what, you thought it was okay to take on the contract? Really?
Well, you've covered a lot of ground. I can't quite. I mean, they must have thought they'd be able to deliver.
It's about everything. It's about everything in life. We just go on to look at.
What's the profit? How much money? How much money can we make out of it? And who's getting paid a decent crack of the whip? It's Uber. It's the Uberification of our society, mate. That's what it is.
But James, you know, let's look at people's lives now. What about those poor 3 cases that were, you know.
12:43 is the time. Bill Elmand, how you go? It is just coming out to 1:45. We'll catch up with Theo Usherwood in the very latest. Bill El said a naughty. If you're wondering why the phone got a bit carried away, said a naughty, and I've red carded him, although only for today. It won't be a permanent arrangement. What do you think is going to change then? What's going to give? Because you sit here every day. I do. You're sitting somewhere else. You might even be standing. And you describe all of these things in a way that means it is now becoming irresistible, isn't it, this observation? That other thing I said to you about in the first hour, in case you thought I was exaggerating, I found the Bill, is it Bill O'Reilly, the ex-Fox News bloke, but essentially now turning on the children whose classmates were killed in Florida. If you're just going to allow this industrialisation of anger and ignorance to go unchecked, where will it end? In social policy, it ends with the mourning classmates being blamed in America by right-wing journalists to being blamed for their reactions to the massacre, calls for gun control. And in economics and commerce, where will it end? It ends with Carillion. Everything falls to pieces. Who suffers? People that run Carillion don't suffer. Don't forget that the fella in charge of Carillion was advising Theresa May on corporate responsibility until, well, I thought of December of last year. You couldn't make it. I was told December of last year, but then when we dug into it, all they could find was March 2017 was when the letter was sent out. December 2016 was apparently when he ceased to be an advisor on corporate responsibility to Downing Street. And do you know, it was that story that prompted The Sun to have a pop at me, pointing out that this Philip Green, not that one, a different one, former chairman of Carillion, was until December of 2016 an advisor to Theresa May on corporate responsibility. Amazing, really. But hey, nothing to see here, folks. Fish, blue passports. Theo Usherwood is here to talk us through events at PMQs this afternoon. Hold on to your hats.
Jeremy Corbyn doesn't do it often, but today he devoted all 6 of his questions at PMQs to Brexit.
Oh, good. I'll put my phone away.
Put your feet up, a cup of tea, settle down, and enjoy the ride when he started off by quoting back David Davis's speech from yesterday at Theresa May.
Jeremy Corbyn!
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, the Brexit Secretary assured the country that Brexit will not plunge Britain into a Mad Max-style world borrowed from dystopian fiction. Doesn't the Prime Minister feel he could set the bar just a little bit higher?
Decent first question there from the Labour leader. And he now has the room, James, to exploit the government because, without denying the result of the 2016 referendum, because there are divisions. On the one hand, you've got the letter from the European Research Group signed by 62 Tory MPs to the PM, the key demands, I should say, full autonomy when it comes to regulations. All this is a wish list.
Yes.
Just bear with me.
That's the unicorn wing.
Yeah, the unicorn. Unicorns and Alice in Wonderland. Only accept implementation period once the final deal is signed, and then revert to World Trade Organization rules, start negotiating free trade deals as soon as we left the block. All of that. Are you crying? Really?
No.
Now, of course, those demands were in stark contrast to what David Davis said yesterday when he asserted that very little will change. The Prime Minister tried to hit the ball back at Jeremy Corbyn and highlight Labour's own splits.
As the Right Honourable Gentleman knows, we're very clear that we're going to ensure that when we leave the European Union, we are going to be able to take back control of our borders, our money and our laws. And I have to say to him, the only fiction around in relation to the Brexit and the European Union is the Labour Party's front bench, who can't even agree with themselves what their policy is.
Yeah, that would have worked about 2 months ago.
Doesn't know, does
She
it?
sounds bored herself on that borders mode. We're taking back control. You could always hear her go, Of our borders, of our money.
What does the book say? What does the book say?
Brexit means Brexit doesn't work anymore. Brexit means not Mad Max.
The key point is that Jeremy Corbyn's position, James, is starting to strengthen. And that's the position from which he is negotiating, not his own particular line one way or another. And, of course, before he had splits within his own party. But demands from the likes of Boris Johnson and Michael Gove around employment rights, environmental rights, they're creating real rallying points for the Labour leader to unify his own party.
Mr. Speaker, in December, the Foreign Secretary and the Environment Secretary were briefing that the Working Time Directive would be scrapped. Yeah. The CBI and the unions are very clear that they're not looking for a bonfire of regulations, quite the opposite. The only party that wants to scrap workers' regulation protections are the party opposite. In her Lancaster House speech a year ago, the Prime Minister clearly stated, "I also want tariff-free trade with Europe." Now, a year on, she's downgraded that aim to as tariff-free as possible. Businesses and workers want tariff-free access to protect jobs. So why has the government abandoned that for as tariff-free as possible?
Fair point there from Jeremy Corbyn. It's interesting, isn't it, how on the one hand you've got the Brexiteers, Jacob Rees-Mogg in this world, and then you've got the Remainers, and everybody is agreeing around one point, that the negotiations are going really badly. And so there's this conflation. This was a conflation that Theresa May always feared. I mean, it was one of the arguments for holding a general election was that you could build up such a majority that even if it was a bad deal, you could get it through Parliament because you'd have the numbers within you. You know, you'd have a triple-digit majority. And Theresa May now, of course, doesn't have that. And everybody's starting to agree that the way things are heading is only south.
Because the people who said there will never be any unicorns are still cross. And the people who still believe there can be unicorns are beginning to realise at least that they're not going to get any. Not that they don't exist, but that they're not going to get any because reality is reaching about 50 to 60% levels in their understanding of the issues.
Yes. So the deal can't be done. And now it's a question of do you abandon it or do you hold a second referendum, as was being launched in Westminster earlier on today?
Would it be beyond the wit of man to suggest that Jeremy Corbyn possibly did have a strategy all along, which is something you have suggested to me in the past, and now arguably you could claim vindication?
Yes, I think that would be fair to say.
Well, you think you might have been right all along, Theo? Interesting.
I think it would be fair to say that they had a strategy. Labour had a strategy of holding back, just seeing how it panned out, see if public opinion would shift, but also to say that at that present time when they were prevaricating, when they were finding it very difficult to actually find a unified position, is to confuse. And then as things become clearer, as the stars start to align in a way that enables the Labour Party to unite behind the idea that it's all going badly, then you can go on the attack. And we saw this now. Theresa May switched, when we're talking, Jeremy Corbyn there was talking about employment rights, she switched on to the Matthew Taylor review, which of course was into the gig economy and so forth, but of course that was watered down.
I have been clear since I became Prime Minister that this is a government that will not only protect workers' rights, but enhance workers' rights. And let's just look at the Conservatives' record in government. Who was it? Which government was it that took action on 0 hours contracts? A Conservative government, not Labour. Which government is it that got Matthew Taylor to actually report on the new economy so we ensure workers get the highest rights? A Conservative government, not Labour. Which government is it that's ensuring that workers' voices are heard on the boards of companies? A Conservative government, not Labour.
Do you know what Theresa May's real problem is here? Is that for Jeremy Corbyn, lots of problems, but there's a real problem here, is that Jeremy Corbyn just has so much material. So he's done, workers' rights. He then switches on to the Customs Union and Northern Ireland.
So given the Prime Minister ruled out any form of customs union with the post-Brexit, can she explain how she expects then to avoid a hard border with Northern Ireland?
The Prime Minister.
The Right Honourable Gentleman and others have asked this question previously. I've already pointed out in this chamber that the government published papers last summer which showed how we can deliver exactly that. No hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, and a bespoke economic partnership with the European Union.
That's a slightly disingenuous answer there from the Prime Minister, because, of course, both options that were put forward were not backed by the European Union, and moving on to phase 2 of the negotiations. Of course, neither are going to be implemented. There needs, of course, to be a frictionless border, and the European Union doesn't want to have to pay for checks at their own ports for goods coming over into the UK. So, questions still unanswered on that one.
Are we done?
No,
Well,
there was one more. I mean, I was going to just...
Sheila's coming. Theo always gets a bit intimidated when Sheila's in there.
Be afraid. Be very afraid.
Come on.
Right, so then we moved on, James, without being distracted, to... there was a talk about whether there was going to be a joke about Jeremy Corbyn and links with communism.
They would never joke about it.
Never.
No, seriously, because this is a very serious piece of journalism. I mean, surely the Prime Minister wouldn't think it was funny, because that would suggest that she realises it's all a load of old nonsense.
Well, she did.
Oh.
Can I suggest to him that he needs to think very carefully about the security partnership that we want with the European Union when we have left? I set out in my speech in Munich last week exactly what we want that security partnership to cover, because we believe in ensuring that we are maintaining the security and safety of people here in the UK, but also of people in Europe. And we are unconditionally committed to the safety and security of Europe. But can I congratulate the Right Honourable Gentleman, because normally he stands up every week and asks me to sign a blank cheque. And I know he likes cheques, but really, that is terribly...
Oh,
That was
Lord,
that
is like your dad dancing, isn't it? That's just unbelievable. They wrote that?
Yeah. Somebody wrote that. Somebody somewhere wrote that.
Do you not think it was a joke in her back pocket and she was supposed to use it if she got the chance, and then because she has no idea what humour is, she thought she'll use it anyway?
Well, it was her joke in her back pocket.
Yeah.
No.
She was supposed to use it in a Bantz type scenario.
What?
So he says something, and then she says, "Well, every week you ask me to sign a blank cheque, and I know you don't." But he didn't say anything that allowed her to use.
Is that Bantz with a TS
with
or
a Z?
Z?
With a Z, and he didn't say anything that allowed her to do the Bantz. So she got it out of the pocket in a non-Bantz scenario and ended up looking like a bit of a Wally.
Really?
Yeah?
No.
No?
No.
All right.
Don't spoil the...
PMQs marks out of 10. I mean, you say Corbyn should be... he has so much material. I suspect, and we'll get our weekly barrage of abuse from Corbyn fans for not being sufficiently upbeat about it. He should be... I mean, this should
winning
be like...
every week.
What's that video game where at the end it goes, finish him?
Street Fighter.
She should be Street Fightering him all over the place, shouldn't she, at the moment? All right.
Harking back. Anyway, I'd give it 5-1.
5-1 to Corbyn. Finish him. Here's Sheila Fogarty.